My friends, what we're seeing now is the absolute collapse of China's 50-year plan to dominate the 21st century. While the establishment was asleep and the mainstream media focused on empty distractions, Donald Trump has just taken control of the real fuel of the future in the heart of Africa. And if you think this is a diplomatic move far removed from your reality, wait until you see how Europe has just surrendered to this exact same vision of strength, ruthlessly expelling the radicalism that has destroyed its capitals in recent decades. The world you knew, that globalist world of open borders and economic submission, ended yesterday, and we are witnessing a heavy blade coming down on the system. And from today on, we will call this ongoing and brutal movement a strategic guillotine. Pay attention to this. The strategic guillotine does not negotiate. It cuts off the enemy's supply and isolates the threat. And that's exactly what happened in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in a geopolitical chess move that completely caught Beijing by surprise and shifted the axis of global power. My friends, the United States has just supported the American company Virtus Minerals in its acquisition and development of two gigantic cobalt and copper producing mines in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Pay attention. This is the first colossal acquisition of rare earth minerals by Americans on the African continent since President Donald Trump signed the historic Washington Agreement last December. So it's already Brazil, India, and Africa. Yes, my friends, look at Trump's strategy to save the United States from China's grip when it comes to rare earths. And you who follow me here know how important this is. So important that Lula saved Moraes' neck by offering Brazil's rare earths to President Trump. And he obviously accepted it right away, but Moraes is another matter that I'll comment on next. The official narrative may try to hide it, but the truth is that China has built over the last 2 decades a structural, profound, and frightening dominance over Africa's natural resources sector. The Institute of Strategic Studies confirmed data that should keep any Western leader up at night. 80% of all the world's cobalt is produced in Congo, and 80% of that production was under the dictatorial control of Beijing. There are no publicly traded companies. There are no private companies. It's the Communist Party that decides who to sell the assets, the minerals, the most important commodities to. The most important in the world? Just so you have an idea, they controlled the key to the batteries of electric cars, the cell phones that are in your hand right now, and even more seriously, the components of next-generation military jets. The F-35 fighter jet, the most advanced fighter in the world and in the United States, depends on critical minerals, rare minerals that are sold and controlled only by China. Every time Trump makes a mean face, Xi Jinping shuts off the supply of minerals. And by closing this deal, Trump didn't just buy mines in Africa, he bought the right to say no to Beijing. He activated the strategic guillotine against the backbone of the Chinese monopoly. Look at how big a move this is that the media refuses to translate for you. The mining company Virtus took control of Chamath's operations, a local producer securing direct access to the Etoile mine in Lubumbashi and the Mutoshi mine in Kolwezi. Together, these two mineral arteries will produce 75,000 tons of copper and 20,000 tons of cobalt per year, with the processing plant starting operations as early as next year. And it doesn't stop there. The CEO of Virtus Minerals, Philip Brown, made it clear that they now hold a total of 56 mining licenses in the region, ready to extract copper, cobalt, and essential metals like tungsten. And the warning here is serious. The West has stopped asking for permission to exist. A strategic guillotine has cut off logistical dependence on Asia because these minerals will be exported directly to the West through the Lobito corridor. We're talking about a monumental railway route all the way to the port in Angola, supported by direct American investment of $5 billion, ensuring a secure, auditable defense supply chain free from Chinese espionage. But why is the mainstream media completely silent about this? because they simply can't admit that the man they call an extremist solved what they themselves called impossible. Trump's deal secured minerals and is reducing regional armed conflicts and rebel infiltrations like those from M23 backed by Rwanda. The analyst Franz Krom from the Foundation summed it up. The United States is no longer delegating its future. They are entering the African continent by kicking the door in to compete for hegemony along the corridors of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. China's economic defeat and the collapse of its mineral monopoly are a brutal shock to the architecture of global trade. But the cultural shock that has just hit the West is even deeper and irreversible. The strategic guillotine didn't fall only in the mineral deserts of Africa. It came down with full force on the suit-wearing bureaucrats in the old continent. What happened in the European Parliament in the last few hours is something many thought we would only see in history books or in speeches labeled as forbidden by the dictatorship of political correctness. Pay attention to this. The Iron Curtain of globalism simply fell in Brussels, crushed by the weight of reality. And this is serious, very serious. On June 17th, the European Parliament was the scene of that caused widespread panic among the global left. Take a look at this. Because Lula is freaking out. By 418 votes to 218, they officially approved the so-called return regulation. Take a look at this. Don't be fooled by the bureaucratic name. This is the strictest, most aggressive and comprehensive deportation framework ever adopted in the history of the European Union. And the same chamber, pay close attention to this, the same chamber that spent 30 years spitting in the faces of European citizens, saying that their cultures, their borders, and the laws of their neighborhoods didn't matter. It was the same chamber that erupted in deafening applause with politicians chanting in unison, "Send them back." And panic gripped the globalists because the old political order collapsed. The center-right bloc of the European People's Party, which always acted like the cowardly rhinoceroses of the establishment, joining the left to isolate the conservatives, was forced by pressure from the streets to ally with the nationalists. They joined the European Conservative Reformists, the Patriots for Europe movement, and the Sovereign Nations Group. And when this patriotic alliance was formed, the force was overwhelming and the coalition became unbeatable, crushing the left-wing opposition by 418 votes. Is no one talking about this on your television? But the European population has finally understood that survival allows no half measures. For you to understand the power of this new law, we need to look at the 4 fundamental pillars that make up this strategic guillotine on migration. First, the endless game of cat and mouse is over. The illegal migrant who receives a return order has the legal duty to cooperate with their own deportation within 30 days. Are we talking about Islamic radicalism? Are we talking about uncontrolled migration from Africa directly to the European continent? If the order has been given, the endless legal process is over. Either you leave willingly or you are removed by force of law. Second, detention, which used to be a 6-month joke, has been quadrupled. Those awaiting removal can now be detained for 24 months, a full 2 years, with the possibility of extension. And those considered national security threats will be thrown into maximum security facilities. The safety of European families finally matters more than the comfort of the invader. Third, and this is the point that's making the UN and the human rights crowd are having a nervous breakdown, the creation of offshore return hubs based on Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's model in Albania is becoming the continent's official rule. European countries will now deport and hold rejected asylum seekers in detention centers outside the borders of the European Union. It's the European version of the American Remain in Mexico policy, shielding Europe from the outside, and the 4th permanent ban. If an individual is deported for being a risk to civilization and public safety, he receives a lifetime ban. It's not 5 years, it's not a temporary suspension, it's the blade of the strategic guillotine coming down forever. You threatened our way of life here in the West. You are permanently banned. Goodbye, farewell, never come back. And to understand the tectonic magnitude of this event, you need to face the reality of the cold, hard numbers. For decades, the European Union operated a perfectly managed system of civilizational surrender. Only 20 of the illegal immigrants who received the deportation order actually left. 80% of the official orders from 27 sovereign nations were simply treated as garbage. 8 out of 10 radical Islamic invaders ignored the law and stayed on the continent. And the result of this madness? Well, Europe underwent the largest forced demographic transformation in modern history. And did you know that this has long been the plan of radical Islamic groups from Iran to take over Europe from within without firing a single shot? Well, at the turn of the last century, there were approximately 10 million Muslims across the entire European continent. Write down this number, 10 million at the turn of the last century. Today, with the connivance of the establishment and the radical globalists left, this number has exploded to more than 50 million Muslims, most of them radicalized, Islamic Shiites and Sunnis. Ordinary European citizens saw their squares taken over by people who don't like to work. They saw their daughters terrified to walk the streets at night. They saw the ancient European architecture being silenced by a culture radically incompatible with Western freedoms. It is public and well known that Islam, when radicalized through the application of Sharia, aims to destroy the Judeo-Christian religion and impose its radicalism in its place. This is Sharia. When the European people tried to protest, when they cried out for help at the polls, the Brussels bureaucrats and the radical left called them fascists and far-right extremists. But the tables have turned. The window of tolerance has been shattered. What is emerging in Europe is relentless civilizational populism, which understands that the real war of the 21st century is not just nation against nation, but Western civilization against the internal and external forces that try to dissolve it. Look at the chain reaction happening now. In Italy, Giorgia Meloni has halved the number of immigrant arrivals with ironclad agreements with North America. In North Africa, they extended detentions and introduced projects to completely ban the use of the burqa in public spaces, schools, and streets. In the Netherlands, Geert Wilders managed to ban the extremist organization Muslim Brotherhood from operating in the country. Just so you know, the Muslim Brotherhood is the same group that supports Hamas and also supports Hezbollah against Israel. It's the same one that supports Iran's terrorist movements. Even in Germany, the progressive stronghold of Angela Merkel, the center-right leader Friedrich Merz had no choice but to announce that 800,000 Syrian refugees will be repatriated and sent back in the coming years. What was once called xenophobia for 30 consecutive years has now become the official line of the European Union. My friends, something frightening has been happening in the state of São Paulo. Governor Tarcísio de Freitas has been introducing public policies to turn São Paulo into a Muslim-friendly environment. In other words, to attract and shape the city of São Paulo to welcome all kinds of Islamic culture. Think of a state policy specifically aimed at Islamic religious and cultural movements, and obviously the money that comes from Islamic countries. But why specifically for Muslims? Why, for example, turn a hotel into a hotel specifically adapted to welcome Muslims in Brazil? Look, Europe did this and today they're having to reverse all of it again. I'm not saying we have to become enemies of Muslims. No. Israel itself is a partner of countries like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Mutual respect, collaboration, including very strong military ties to face Iran. But my friends, be careful, very careful, Governor Tarcísio de Freitas. Sometimes your intention is good, but the doors that open along this path can be disastrous. The great globalist elite is in absolute panic over all this. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights deeply lamented the decision. And the leftist alliances called the celebration horrifying, but I'll tell you what's really horrifying. What's horrifying is that it took 3 decades for Western leaders to start defending their own citizens again. What's horrifying is that an entire generation of European children grew up being taught by their own rulers to hate the glorious heritage of their ancestors. The system is in deep shock because the West has awakened, activated the strategic guillotine, and started cleaning house from the inside out to solidify our elite understanding of this historical movement. And look at this. Trump declares war on illegal immigration around the world, starting with the United States, declares war on Islamic radicalism, declares war on globalism. And now the changes are starting to appear. Does the pressure work or not? By brute force. So there are 2 words I want you to type now in the comments to prove that you're not a hostage of the mainstream media. Global checkmate, type that now and take your position on this board. My friends, it's time to show that real change is possible and to sound the alarm so that Brazil doesn't repeat the mistakes made by the European Union. And so I need to speak directly to you who have top-level knowledge, an incredible background, a message that everyone should receive, but who still feels invisible here in this digital world. You record, you pay, you change your mind, you see mediocrity being rewarded every day and you think your time has passed. Look at the depth of the delusion you're falling into. The problem was never your lack of talent. It's not your story. The problem, pure and simple, is the lack of a lethal method. The internet doesn't crown those who just have a diploma. It rewards those who master communication and turn a common idea into something non-negotiable. On July 12th, here in Curitiba, I will open up the black box behind my method in an in-depth, in-person immersion inside my professional studio with my entire team. There will be only 10 seats. You will learn high retention scripting, positioning, and how to build unshakable authority. Use the QR code that appears right now on your screen or click the link that's in the first pinned comment and in the description of this video. Or better yet, type "I want" in the comments now and secure your spot before the steel door closes. Look, don't miss this opportunity to learn from me how I get over 50 million views every month and how I turn all of that into dollars. So, my friends, the only ones who don't do it are those who haven't learned how to do it the right way yet. And pay attention, stop wasting time trying to choose a movie or series to watch. Many times you spend an hour on Netflix and in the end you pick a lousy movie that just made you waste your precious time. And that time you spend watching movies full of woke culture and whining, you never get it back. So we solved this problem. We created our own series and movie channel. The link is in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the card that will appear here, where we give tips on what to watch with your family on the weekend. So don't worry. Everything is designed to enrich your knowledge or simply entertain you during your downtime, okay? Now subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video because it takes work to make it. Yes, blend your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.